The city outside David Chun's window was half asleep, a haze of neon reflections sliding down rain-slick glass, the hum of distant traffic like a mechanical lullaby. Inside his apartment, the air was thick with the scent of turpentine and acrylics, the ghosts of color that clung to every surface. Canvases leaned against the walls in uneven stacks, half-finished portraits staring at him from the dark. His easel stood like a tired sentinel in the corner, the latest commission, a grandmother's face frozen in uncertain warmth, mocking him with its incompleteness. David rubbed his temples, smearing a faint line of ultramarine across his forehead without noticing. He'd been awake for 20 hours straight, chasing light and emotion through brushstrokes that never felt alive. The dream of being a real artist, the kind whose work mattered, had shriveled into a string of underpaid jobs and polite rejections. His back ached, his mind buzzed with caffeine, and the silence felt heavier than paint on his skin. He shut off the lamp and let the darkness swallow the room. The moment before sleep came was always the worst, that edge between exhaustion and despair, where the world felt too quiet, too empty. But tonight, something broke the monotony. A faint pulse of blue light glowed beneath his pillow, soft and rhythmic, like a heartbeat under glass. David blinked, thinking it was an afterimage from his computer screen. But the glow didn't fade. It shimmered, breathing in the dark. He sat up slowly, chest tight, a dozen absurd explanations flickering through his headphone light. Trick of the eyes, paint reaction, but none of them held. With hesitant fingers, he lifted the pillow. What he saw made his breath stutter. Sitting cross-legged on the rumpled sheet was a woman no taller than his hand. Her skin radiated a soft inner light that painted his room in celestial hues. Her hair spilled like molten silver down her back, and her eyes, those eyes held the shimmer of distant galaxies. She wore something that looked like a dress, spun from moonlight and gossamer, and as she turned her head toward him, the fabric caught the air and rippled like water. Tiny wings quivered on her back, translucent as glass. David froze, his heartbeat echoing in his ears. The rational part of his mind screamed hallucination, sleep deprivation, gas leak, anything to make sense of what he was seeing. But another part, the quieter one buried deep beneath years of disillusionment, whispered that he was finally seeing the kind of magic he'd always painted, but never believed could exist. The tiny woman looked up at him and smiled, her voice a delicate chime that seemed to vibrate in his bones. "Please do not be afraid," she said, standing gracefully. "My name is Pixie, and I come from the planet Stellaris, in what you call the Andromeda Galaxy." The words barely registered. His brain clung to the image of her lips moving, the impossibility of the sound they made. He laughed once, quietly, a breathless sound of disbelief. "I'm dreaming," he whispered. "I have to be." Pixie tilted her head, a soft light shifting over her features. "You are David Chun, 28 years old, artist, dreamer of impossible things. You are not dreaming." David sank onto the edge of the bed, his fingers gripping the sheets. How do you know my name?" She stepped closer, her wings fluttering with a faint hum. "We've been watching your world, searching for those who can see beauty beyond the ordinary. My people are explorers of the heart as much as of the stars. You, David Chun, were chosen because your soul still remembers wonder." The air in the room felt electric. His eyes darted around, as if proof of reality might be hiding in the clutter. "This is insane," he muttered, half to himself. "You're real?" She smiled, and for a heartbeat, the light from her body intensified, flooding the room in blue-gold radiance. "As real as your loneliness," she said gently, "and as real as the art you create to escape it." He stared at her, mouth dry. Something in her words hit too close, piercing the numbness that had ruled him for months. "Why me?" he asked quietly. Pixie's wings trembled, scattering light like tiny comets. "Because I did not come by accident," she whispered, her gaze locking with his. "I came to find you, David Chun." The silence that followed was alive, breathing, trembling between disbelief and destiny. David felt something stir inside him, something that had been asleep for far too long. In that fragile moment, surrounded by spilled paint and starlight, the man who no longer believed in beauty realized that beauty had come looking for him. David didn't sleep that night. He sat at the edge of his bed, staring at the glowing figure perched delicately on his pillow, trying to convince himself he hadn't lost his mind. Every breath she took shimmered in the air, soft trails of light curling around her like smoke. Outside, the rain had stopped, and Portland's faint city glow leaked through the blinds, mixing with the alien luminescence until the room looked caught between two worlds. "You said you came to find me," he murmured, his voice rough from disbelief and exhaustion. "Why?" Pixie's wings fluttered, their translucent edges catching the light. She hesitated, glancing toward his easel, the unfinished portrait bathed in faint blue glow. "Because my people are fading," she said softly. "We have watched your kind from afar, fascinated by your chaos, your emotions, your relentless creativity. On Stellaris, we perfected life. We eliminated hunger, war, even jealousy. And in doing so, we also killed something sacred. Our hearts have grown quiet." Her gaze lifted to his, eyes deep as galaxies. "You still feel. You still dream, even when the world tells you to stop. We need that." David blinked slowly, trying to make sense of it. "You're saying your civilization is dying of perfection?" She nodded. "Perfection without passion is decay." He ran a hand through his messy hair and laughed under his breath. "So what, you've come to take art lessons?" Pixie smiled faintly. "Something like that. But my mission is far more personal. I've come to propose a union, a bond." The word hung in the air, strange and fragile. "A bond?" David repeated. "You mean like an alliance?" Her glow dimmed slightly, as if she were embarrassed. "Among my people, alliances are not made with treaties. They are made with hearts." His mind froze, then stumbled. "You're telling me you came across the galaxy to what? Fall in love?" Pixie's cheeks brightened to a pale rose hue. "Not to fall. To rise. To bridge." The sincerity in her tone stole the mockery from his lips. She stepped closer, the pillow dipping slightly beneath her tiny feet. "You think love is small because you have only seen its human form. But love is energy. It crosses light years. It binds stars. Our scientists have proven it exists as vibration, frequency, something measurable yet infinite. I was chosen because my resonance matched yours." David rubbed his temples. "Resonance? You make it sound like music," she interrupted gently. "You create through color and shape, but your soul sings." I heard it. Her words sank deep, unsettling him. He remembered nights painting until dawn, losing himself in strokes of blue and gold, chasing a feeling he couldn't name. "This is insane," he whispered. "You can't possibly know me." Pixie smiled sadly. "I know the way you stare at your own work, as if waiting for it to talk back. I know the loneliness that clings to you when the world stops paying attention. I know the ache of wanting something real and not knowing where to find it." He looked away, throat tight. "You shouldn't know that." "I do," she said simply. "Because I feel it too." For a long moment, neither spoke. The air hummed between them like a held breath. Then Pixie lifted her hand, and a faint sound began to rise, a melody that wasn't quite human, something between a sigh and a song. The sound curled through the room, delicate as wind chimes, beautiful beyond reason. Without thinking, David found himself humming in response, his deeper voice blending with hers, creating a harmony that seemed to vibrate through the floorboards and up his spine. When their notes met perfectly, the air shimmered with blue sparks, like static made of starlight. The light dimmed, and they sat in silence again, the sound still echoing inside his chest. Pixie exhaled, her voice trembling. "Do you feel it?" David nodded slowly. "What was that?" "Proof," she whispered. "Our hearts speak the same language." He tried to find words, but none came. His entire life, he had painted what he couldn't explain beauty, pain, longing, and now, for the first time, he had felt it returned. "Pixie," he said quietly, "I don't understand how any of this is possible." She smiled softly, stepping to the edge of the pillow until she stood just inches from his hand. "That's the best kind of beginning." David Chun, the impossible ones. He wanted to ask more, to demand explanations, logic, anything that made sense, but when she reached out and laid her tiny hand on his finger, the questions vanished. Her touch was warm, alive, pulsing faintly in rhythm with his heartbeat. "Then why me?" he whispered again, voice almost breaking. "Because," she said, her voice no louder than a breath, "you paint worlds that don't exist, yet believe in them anyway. And I come from one." Morning crept into the apartment like an intruder, sliding between the blinds in thin golden stripes that cut across the chaos of paint tubes and crumpled sketches. David sat motionless on the couch, a cold cup of coffee untouched beside him. He hadn't slept. The night had replayed in his head like a fever dream. The glow, the song, the impossible creature who had spoken to him as if she'd known him all his life. Every logical part of him insisted he'd imagined it, a hallucination born of exhaustion and paint fumes. Yet when he turned his head toward the bed, the faint shimmer of blue still lingered on the pillow like the echo of moonlight. Then he saw her. Pixie was curled among the folds of his blanket, her tiny body rising and falling with the slow rhythm of sleep. In daylight, her glow was softer, but her beauty no less unreal. She looked almost fragile, like something the world wasn't meant to touch. David rose quietly, heart pounding as he took a hesitant step closer. She stirred, stretching her delicate limbs, wings fluttering once before opening her eyes. Those eyes, they weren't just beautiful, they were vast, like staring into a night sky full of memories. "You're still here," he said hoarsely. She smiled sleepily. "Of course. I said I would stay." Her voice was lighter now, almost playful, and something inside him eased. He sat beside the bed, running a hand through his hair. "You do realize that on Earth, this is insane. Tiny glowing women from Andromeda don't just show up." Pixie tilted her head. "And yet here I am." "Yeah," he muttered, almost smiling. "Here you are." She floated up from the bed, wings beating gently until she hovered at eye level. "Perhaps I can help you understand?" She touched the small device on her wrist, and a low hum filled the room. The air rippled, bending the light until the space above his desk exploded into color. David gasped. The hologram unfolded like a blooming flower, an entire planet hanging in the air before him. He saw crystalline towers spiraling into lavender clouds, rivers of liquid light threading through floating gardens, and creatures like living constellations drifting above translucent cities. Music resonated faintly from the projection, not a tune, but a vibration that felt alive. "This is Stellaris," Pixie said softly, her tone laced with pride and sorrow. "My home." David stood slowly, transfixed. "It's beautiful." "It was," she whispered. Her hand moved, and the projection changed. The radiant cities dimmed. Shadows crept across the crystalline towers, fracturing them with dark cracks. The skies dulled to gray. The once living rivers froze into motionless streams of glass. What happened? He breathed. Pixie's voice trembled. We forgot how to feel. For thousands of years, we built a perfect civilization. No hunger, no conflict, no pain. But with every flaw we removed, we lost a piece of ourselves. Passion became inefficiency. Love became irrelevant. We stopped creating art. We stopped dreaming. Our hearts. She looked down. Our hearts went silent. David stared at the dying vision, his throat tight. That's why you came here. To fix it. To remember it, she corrected gently. The Council believes that by forming emotional bonds with species like yours, species still ruled by chaos and passion, we might rediscover what we've lost. And they sent you, he said quietly. They sent you to find someone like me. Pixie nodded, her glow dimming with the memory. But it was my choice to find you. David blinked. You mean, they didn't tell you who to choose? She met his gaze, and he saw something raw there. Fear, vulnerability, maybe even longing. No, I saw you through our observatories. Alone, painting through the night, trying to breathe life into your art, even as your world ignored it. I felt your yearning across the stars, David. I knew your heart could save us, because it still hurts. The words struck him harder than he expected. He looked at his stained hands, the calluses, the scars of his craft. You're talking like I'm important, he said bitterly. I'm not. I'm just some failed artist who can't even pay rent. You create beauty out of nothing, Pixie replied, her voice trembling with quiet intensity. That is the purest power in the universe. For a moment, the only sound was the hum of the hologram. Then David reached out, his fingertip brushing through the projection, through Stellaris. The image rippled like water under his touch. If you're right, he murmured, if your people have lost love, how can one human help you remember it? Pixie flew closer until she hovered inches from his face. By letting me love you, she said simply. The words struck him like a shockwave. He stumbled back, breath unsteady. Pixie, you don't have to answer now, she said quickly, sensing his confusion. I only wanted you to see the truth. My world is fading. But when I found you, I felt it stir again. That spark, that warmth. I don't want to lose it. She touched her chest, where her light pulsed faintly. When I look at you, I remember what it means to be alive. He wanted to respond, to say something that would make sense of the impossible, but his voice failed him. All he could do was watch her hover there, fragile and radiant, a living dream asking for something both beautiful and terrifying. The hologram flickered out, plunging the room back into quiet blue twilight. She landed softly on his desk, her wings folding behind her. David, she whispered, I know it seems impossible, but the impossible is where love begins. And in that moment, surrounded by paint, silence, and starlight, David felt something shift deep within him, a quiet recognition that his life, once small and gray, had just stepped across the border of forever. The next evening bled into being like a painting David couldn't stop staring at. The city beyond his window was washed in soft amber light, and every reflection in the rain-speckled glass reminded him of her. Pixie hadn't left his thoughts all day. She'd filled every blank space of his mind, like color seeping into canvas. He'd tried to work, to lose himself in brushstrokes and texture, but every time he lifted his hand, he saw the shimmer of her light on his skin. When night finally fell, he sat on his bed, heart restless, eyes fixed on the dark window. Then, just as the clock struck midnight, the familiar soft hum returned. The blue glow bloomed outside like a heartbeat against the night, and moments later, the tiny craft drifted in through the crack of his window, settling on the sill with soundless grace. Pixie stepped out, radiant as ever. But tonight she wore something different. A dress woven from shifting green and violet light, the hues of auroras in motion. "You came back," David breathed. "You doubted I would?" She teased, her eyes glimmering. "No," he said softly. "I doubted myself." She smiled at that, a smile that seemed to understand everything he couldn't say. "You've been thinking about my proposal." "I haven't thought about anything else," he admitted. "But I still don't understand how this could ever work." "You're?" He gestured helplessly. "You're the size of my hand. You live in another galaxy. I don't even know what you eat." Pixie's laughter was soft, musical. "You humans always begin with the impossible. Perhaps it's time I show you the possible." She tapped her wrist device, and a column of pale light surrounded her. David leaned forward, eyes widening as her small form began to grow, not rapidly, but gracefully, like unfolding light. When the glow faded, she stood nearly a foot tall, perfectly proportioned, ethereal, yet undeniably real. She took a breath, slightly winded, and smiled up at him. "There," she said, "a little closer to your world scale." David was speechless. She looked almost human now, yet every detail still shimmered with celestial precision. "How did you?" "Size is a matter of energy and frequency," Pixie said. "We can bend both for short periods, though it takes strength." Her glow flickered slightly, proof of the cost. She stepped forward and touched his hand. "But this is not what truly matters. Come, I want to show you how I see." She lifted her palm and pressed it to his forehead. The world exploded. His apartment vanished in a surge of color and sound. He gasped as he saw energy fields dancing around every object, the cup on his desk, the dying plant by the window, even the dust motes floating in the air. Each thing vibrated with a rhythm, a faint music, like the heartbeat of existence itself. He could hear it all, the whisper of light, the hum of molecules, the symphony of life. When he looked at Pixie, she was blinding. Her body glowed with 1,000 shades of silver and blue, her heartbeat sending ripples of golden light through the air. "This," she whispered, her voice echoing in his mind, "is how we see the universe. Every being is a song. Every soul sings a different melody. Yours was the first I heard clearly in centuries." Tears burned behind his eyes. The world had never seemed so alive. "Pixie," he murmured, "it's beautiful." She smiled. "And now you understand why I chose you." Slowly, the vision faded. The light dimmed, the hum receded, and his apartment returned to its ordinary state. But it didn't feel ordinary anymore. Everything pulsed with hidden life. "What you showed me," he said quietly, "it changes everything." "It should," she said, "because love is the same. You don't see it, you feel its resonance. And when two hearts align, their songs amplify each other. That's how we form our unions. That's why I came to you." She reached for him, and he found himself offering his hand instinctively. She stepped into his palm, light as breath, and looked up at him with those infinite eyes. "If I say yes," he whispered, "what happens next?" Pixie's expression softened. "Then we begin the bridge. Our hearts will connect, and through us, both our worlds will learn again what it means to feel." David stared down at her, at this impossible being who spoke of love as though it were a universal force of gravity. Every rational thought told him this was madness, but his heart had already chosen. He smiled, trembling. "Then yes," he said. "Yes, Pixie of Stellaris." The room filled with light. It burst outward from their hands, blue and gold entwining like twin galaxies colliding. For an instant, he saw the stars themselves bend toward each other in the infinite dark, and he knew the truth she had been trying to tell him all along. Love wasn't something that belonged to one species, one size, or one world. It was the song that kept the universe alive. When the glow faded, Pixie leaned against his thumb, her voice a trembling whisper. "You've just changed everything, David Chun." And for the first time in years, he believed her. 3 weeks later, David Chun stood at the threshold of the impossible. The world around him was pure light, a kaleidoscope of crystal, color, and sound so vivid it seemed alive. He was 6 inches tall now, shrunken by Stellarian technology that pulsed faintly against his skin, a seamless band of living metal around his wrist. The sensation of being small was strange at first, disorienting, like living inside a dream. But beside him stood Pixie, no longer tiny, but perfectly his height, radiant as ever, her hand warm in his. They floated toward the surface of Stellaris. In a ship smaller than a refrigerator, yet it moved through the cosmos like a star in flight. The planet unfolded below them, dazzling and infinite, a glowing sphere of blue-white crystal wrapped in rivers of light. Towers spiraled like frozen lightning into the atmosphere. "It's more beautiful than I imagined," David whispered. "It's not beauty that matters," Pixie said softly. "It's what lies beneath it. My people have forgotten that." Her eyes shimmered with a quiet melancholy, but when she turned to him, she smiled. "Are you ready to meet them?" David hesitated. His heart pounded, and his palms were slick with sweat. "I'm about to meet the alien equivalent of your parents and your government at the same time. So no, I'm terrified." She laughed, the sound like a melody that echoed through the small cabin. "You'll be fine. Just be you." "That's what I'm afraid of," he muttered when the ship descended. It landed on a platform that seemed carved from pure glass, but when David stepped onto it, it sang beneath his feet, an ethereal resonance that made the air itself hum. Thousands of Stellarians had gathered to witness their arrival. They were luminous beings, similar to Pixie, but less vivid, their light dimmer, their wings slower, their eyes distant. None smiled. None showed curiosity. They simply watched. "They look," David started. "Hollow," Pixie finished. "Emotion is a memory here now, something we study, not something we feel." She squeezed his hand, grounding him. "But that's why you're here." Together, they entered. The Hall of Harmony, a vast chamber domed with translucent crystal, its walls alive with flowing streams of color. In the center stood the Council of Elders, their forms tall and pale, like living specters of light. Their voices came in unison, soft but resonant, rippling through the air like a tide. "Pixie of Stellaris," they said, "you bring an outsider into our world." "I bring a bridge," she replied, bowing gracefully. "David Chun of Earth, the human whose heart sings in harmony with mine." The eldest among them, an ancient being of near-transparent light, stepped forward, her voice like wind in distant chimes. "You seek to bond across the boundaries of form and species. Do you understand what this means, human?" David swallowed hard. "I don't think anyone could truly understand," he said. "But I know what I feel. I know that love isn't perfect. It's messy, unpredictable, sometimes painful. But maybe that's the point. Maybe that's what makes it real." A murmur rippled through the assembly. The elder tilted her head, studying him. "On Stellaris, we achieved harmony by removing imperfection." "You suggest the opposite." David nodded, his voice steadying as he continued. "Without imperfection, there's no growth. Without mistakes, there's no music, only silence. Love isn't something you preserve. It's something you risk every day." Pixie's light brightened beside him, as though his words gave her strength. The elder's form flickered, faint colors running through her otherwise pure white glow. "Risk," she echoed softly, as if tasting the word for the first time in eons. "Perhaps that is what we have forgotten." She lifted her hand, and a resonance filled the air, deep and ancient. Then let the ceremony of heart-binding commence. The hall transformed. Streams of light coiled downward, wrapping around David and Pixie like silken ribbons of color. He felt warmth spread through his chest, pulsing in rhythm with hers. The walls of the chamber pulsed with sound, a low hum rising to a symphony. Pixie turned to him, her eyes wet with starlight. "This is where it begins," she whispered. They each lifted a small crystal, clear at first, then glowing brighter as their hands touched. Energy surged through them both, threads of gold and blue weaving together until the crystals merged into one, hovering between their palms. The hall erupted in color. The watching Stellarians gasped as light poured from the joined crystal, flooding every corner of the chamber. David saw tears shimmer on faces that had not wept in centuries, saw beings reaching for each other's hands, their dim light rekindling. The elder's voice trembled. "The harmony is changing." Pixie pressed her forehead to his, their glow merging completely. "It's working," she breathed. "They're remembering." When the light finally dimmed, the Hall of Harmony no longer felt sterile. It pulsed faintly with life, like a heart rediscovered. The council stepped forward. "David, son of Earth," the eldest said, "your love has awakened what time had silenced. You are now bound to us and to her. Go forth as the first bridge between Stellaris and humanity." Pixie took his hand, her smile luminous and trembling. "You've done it," she whispered. "You've given my people their hearts back." He looked around, stunned, watching beings who moments ago seemed carved from ice, now embracing one another, their voices rising like a chorus of stars. "No," he said quietly, "we did." And as the chamber filled with light, David realized that for the first time in his life, his art had stepped off the canvas and into reality. He wasn't just painting the extraordinary anymore, he was living it. Months later, the city of Portland no longer felt gray. Even on rainy mornings, when mist hung low over the rooftops and the streets shimmered like liquid glass, David saw color in everything, the way the clouds fractured light, the soft gleam of reflections in puddles, the quiet hum of people moving through their lives. The world sang now, and he could hear it. His apartment had changed too. Where once there had been clutter and decay, now there was life. Stellarian technology had reshaped the space-tiny crystalline gardens glowed on the windowsill. Streams of soft blue light ran along the edges of the ceiling like veins of living art, and miniature platforms floated where Pixie could walk at her natural size. On the desk where his paints used to dry to dust, new pigments shimmered with impossible hues colors that had no names on Earth. Pixie had brought them to him from her world, saying softly, "Now you can paint what I see." And he did. The canvases that followed seemed alive, each stroke pulsing faintly with energy, each portrait radiating warmth. The art world noticed. Galleries that once ignored him now called daily. Critics wrote about transcendence, alien color theory, emotion beyond comprehension. They had no idea how literal those words were. But fame wasn't what changed David the most. It was her. Pixie had become a part of his everyday. Sometimes she was small enough to sit in his palm. Other times she adjusted to human height, curling beside him on the couch as they watched the world outside the window. She was curious about everything: rain, music, laughter, coffee, and she absorbed it all with a childlike joy that made him fall in love with her over and over again. Together, they had built something that felt impossible. A life balanced between two worlds. Every few months, they returned to Stellaris through the Shimmer Gate, a portal of light that linked their hearts to that crystalline world. Each time they arrived, they found the cities brighter, the skies more vivid, the songs of its people louder. Love had begun to spread through the Stellarian population like a rekindled fire. Art bloomed again. Emotion returned. The cold perfection that had dominated for centuries was breaking. replaced by laughter, tears, and the beautiful chaos of feeling. The council welcomed them, each visit with quiet reverence, calling them ambassadors of the heart. One night, long after their latest return to Earth, David woke to find Pixie sitting by the window, bathed in moonlight. She looked fragile, her glow faint. "Pix," he murmured, sitting up. She turned, smiling weakly. "You can feel it too, can't you?" He frowned. "Feel what?" "The pull," she whispered. "The bridge between us, it's beginning to merge fully. Our energies are becoming one." Her voice was gentle, but beneath it he heard the tremor of fear. He rose, kneeling beside her. "Is that bad?" She shook her head slowly. "Not bad, just inevitable. Every union between worlds requires balance. I have given much light to yours. Now it begins to return through you." David took her hand warm, trembling, impossibly small. "You're saying that I'm fading," she finished softly. "Not dying, David, transforming." His chest tightened, panic rising. No, there has to be something." "Shh." She pressed a finger to his lips. "You once told me that love was chaos, that it couldn't be perfect. This is part of that imperfection. You gave my people their hearts back. Now you must carry that light for both of us." Her glow flickered, and tears welled in his eyes. "I can't lose you." "You won't," she whispered. "Look." She lifted his hand and placed it against her chest. He felt the soft, rhythmic pulse of her light then. Slowly, it flowed into him, threads of gold weaving through his veins. He gasped as warmth flooded his body, an energy that felt infinite, alive, heartbreaking. Pixie's body began to dissolve into motes of starlight, drifting upward like dust caught in moonbeams. Her voice was a whisper in the glow. "You are my song now, David Chun. Every heartbeat you have is ours." And then she was gone, nothing but light that sank gently into his chest, leaving behind a single glowing crystal heart where she had sat. He clutched it to his chest, tears falling freely, whispering her name again and again. Days passed in quiet disbelief. He worked because she would have wanted him to, and every time he touched a brush, his skin glowed faintly blue. When he painted, the colors came alive, moving softly across the canvas as if breathing. People who saw his art said they felt something brief, love, peace, joy, as if their own hearts were waking up. And somewhere deep inside him, he could still feel her presence, like a pulse of light beneath his ribs. When he slept, he dreamed of Stellaris, of crystalline skies, and the faint laughter of a woman made of starlight. Months later, astronomers around the world began reporting an anomaly, a faint twin light flickering near the Andromeda Galaxy. It pulsed in rhythm, once every 2 seconds, like a heartbeat across space. Scientists called it a mystery. David knew better. He would stand at his window at night, look up at that faint flicker, and whisper, "I see you." And sometimes, just sometimes, the light would brighten, as if answering. In time, people began to speak of something else, an unexplainable warmth spreading across humanity. Strangers showed kindness more easily. Artists said they felt new inspiration. Love, it seemed, had begun to hum louder across the planet. David's paintings hung in museums now, and people stood before them for hours, tears in their eyes, not knowing why. But he knew. Because love, he'd learned, didn't die. It changed form, it traveled, it found a way. On clear nights, when the stars shone bright and the city lights dimmed just enough, the Andromeda flicker could be seen even without telescopes. 2 lights pulsing together, steady and eternal. The astronomers named them the lover's signal. And every time David looked up at that celestial heartbeat, he smiled through the ache in his chest, whispering to the universe, "I told you, Pixie, the impossible ones always find a way."